Anthony did his predictions over-under on each Big Ten team. So go and check that out over at thewolverine.com. Great stuff. But I will just list them out here, and then we can talk about any interesting ones. And a lot of these, obviously, Michigan will play most of these teams. But we will start, and there they are up on the screen as well, thanks to our producer, Megan. But Illinois with 6.5 wins. Indiana, 3.5 wins. Iowa, 7.5 wins. Maryland at 7.5. Michigan at 10.5. Michigan State, 5.5. Minnesota, 7.5. Nebraska, 6.5. Northwestern, 3.5. Ohio State, 10.5. Penn State, 9.5. Purdue, 5.5. Rutgers, 3.5. Wisconsin, 8.5. You have the Michigan, Ohio State, those two teams at the top. You have Penn State, that's kind of right there. You have teams like Michigan State, who are vying for bowl games. What stands out to you guys out of that group? AB, you can go first. Obviously, you wrote this fantastic article.
Yeah, I would talk about the article really quick, just with the caveat. It's kind of where I'm leaning on some of these over-unders right now. I mean, we've got a huge Big Ten preview that we'll be putting together soon for our football preview magazine. So that was kind of the cursory kicking that off for me. So go check out that column, just kind of where I'm leaning right now. I mean, a couple things that stood out were Wisconsin at 8.5 wins, given that they're in a coach like Luke Fickell's a tremendous coach, probably the best head coaching candidate a school like Wisconsin can realistically land. I mean, I thought that was a good get for them, but they're kind of far and away when you look at the betting odds, like not far and away, but one of the basically the favorite to win the Big Ten West. And I just feel like it won't be that easy in year one with a new head coach. So that one, I'm probably would lean under on that. Iowa, I mean, if there were a couple games last year where if they could even have just gotten themselves to 10 points on offense, they probably win 10 games. And, I know time heals all wounds, and I feel like the Cade McNamara stuff is kind of in the rearview mirror, but he's the best quarterback they've had, in a while. So I think that 7.5 wins for them. I think the over on that, I mean, to me, that's probably the favorite to win the Big Ten West. So we'll see there. I think Nebraska has a shout out again to Megan, has a shot to hit the over on that. I think that that's actually going to be a transition that hits a little faster than maybe a school like Wisconsin or Purdue, for example. A couple others that stood out. Northwestern, hey, shout out AJ Henning again. But Northwestern, just 3.5 seems low. I know they've had a rough few years. They're 4-20 the last 2 seasons. That it feels like they're due for kind of being back on the upswing. And then Michigan State 5.5. I just look at that roster and I see 5 wins. I see probably 5 wins right now on there. So the under on that is where I would lean. But other than that, I mean, everything kind of feels accurate on here. 3 schools at the top, not surprising at all. And yeah, I think this is going to be a year. I don't know if there's anyone that's going to be clearly the worst team in the Big Ten. I think that middle to lower tier is just kind of going to beat up on each other while the class of the conference just kind of takes care of their business.
As a Chippewa, you kind of conceded that game to Michigan State already, huh? They're going to be that bad?
I mean, half of CMU's campus is just chock full of Michigan State fans anyway, so it already kind of feels like an L. But hey, they had a pair of wins in the 90s. They had one, I think it was 2008 or something like that. It's happened before, so we'll see. But yeah, MSU was kind of I don't know. I don't want to stoke the flames of the rivalry here, but I just don't see it with them.
Okay. You know what? I would agree with you on Wisconsin. I believe a new system too, right? I mean, they aren't going to be running that power football that they've been running for how many years. And so, you think about going from Rich Rod or going from Lloyd Carr to Rich Rod, and, these guys have a lot to learn. So I'm with you. I think Iowa wins the West. I wouldn't doubt if Minnesota finished ahead of Wisconsin too. So Wisconsin is going to be one of the more interesting ones to watch, and in time, I think that program will be really, really strong. So under Luke Fickell, who has really proven himself as a coach. So I do like the over with Iowa as well. I like Michigan to win 11 games, as I've said. They're basically saying, is Michigan going to lose 1 or 2, right? Is what it's coming down, or none, 1 or 2. And so I don't think they're going to lose two games in the regular season. And I'm assuming this is regular season that we're talking about. So, but I'm with you on Northwestern. I've said I think Pat Fitzgerald is a good coach. It was funny seeing him behind Mel Tucker, I think at number 10. You've got to take his whole body of work into consideration when you look at the job that he's done at Northwestern. And yeah, the last few years have been tough for him, but he's some things at Northwestern that a lot of people wouldn't have expected him to do. So Indiana, that seems about right. Maryland's going to be an interesting one. We were talking about the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten. Did you overlook Tolia, Clay, when you were putting that on there, or you just think those other guys like Aller and those guys will be better?
Yeah, I just think Talia basically at this point kind of is what he is. I like him. I think he's solid, but I think in terms of the biggest threats, and a lot of it has to do probably with the supporting cast, which isn't fair necessarily, but yeah, I think at this point we kind of know what he is, and I think there's going to be higher upside for the Penn State and Ohio State quarterbacks.
Okay, there you go. I'm good with it. That's all I got.
And I'm looking at it here. It's like there's what, 5 teams projected to go under 500. Michigan gets to play 4 of those teams, which I think is favorable. And it was funny when I was talking to Tom Dienhart, who does a fantastic job for Golden Black, our Purdue site, before the Big Ten championship game, and we were just kind of shooting the breeze after we got the interview done for our opponent preview, and I was like, man, it's impressive. I like Jeff Brom and kind of what he's done. He's like, and it's funny too because he said, well, it looks like he'll be staying, which he wasn't because no one knew that Satterfield was going to jump ship to Cincinnati, and Fickle starts the whole domino effect. But he's like, yeah, it looks like he'll be staying, but he's like, I don't think they're going to get back here for a long time if they ever do. I believe is exactly what he said. And I was like, oh, interesting. And I said, yeah, well, Purdue comes to the big house next year. And he said, yeah, they lose a lot. They're not going to be very good. And sure enough, projected at 5.5. So, Purdue, it feels like with a lot of these Big Ten West teams, you kind of got to take advantage and try to make it as far as you can when you can, because there's just so many, they just cannibalize each other over there. And you think one team's going to win it. I think going into the last weekend of the regular season last year, and weren't there like 3 or 4 teams in play, and none of them had impressive records, and Purdue comes out of it. But I have no clue what to make of Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. I think any one of those 3 teams could win it. So we will see on those. I think it's fortunate to an extent that Michigan doesn't have to play Wisconsin. I do think Fickle's a good coach, and he's made some really big transfer portal pickups there. But what do you guys think about Michigan at 10.5? Would you take over or under?
Over. I think they're going to have either one. I think they're going to have one loss going into the Ohio State game, and just because, man, it is so hard. And I understand that each year is unique, but a lot of things have to go right to be undefeated in the Big Ten. And I do think they beat Ohio State for a 3rd straight time. Do they lose in Happy Valley? It's possible. It's a tough place to play, guys, and we've seen that. We've seen Michigan go up there and struggle with some better teams than this is going to be the best team that they've taken there, in my opinion. But to me, I don't see any other losses on the schedule with the exception of perhaps that one. So there's always a danger when you go like at Nebraska than at Minnesota. You got 2 long road trips, and then
one of those is going to be close.
Right, you would think so. And there's, that's stupid. How could you think so? Well, look at Illinois. Look at Nebraska 2 years ago. Look at, it's just not the cakewalk that you think it's going to be, folks, and it almost never is, even for the best teams in the country at times, the highest rated teams in the country. Look at Ohio State was in the playoff last year, got taken to the wire by Maryland last year, right? So Georgia was in games with, they should have lost at Tennessee, I think, or what was it? They were down
Missouri.
Missouri. Right. So you know what? It's just not the breeze that you think it is, and there are a lot of these kids are human, and it's just tough. So. To me, it's an 11-1 season. Probably, if I had to pick a loss right now, I'd say at Penn State. I reserve the right to change that, but then I think they beat Ohio State, and then they're back in the Big Ten championship game.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's hard to do what they did last year because it felt so easy. It was so clinical most of the year. But as that Illinois game showed you, earmuffs for the little kids out there. Every single year, there is at least one oh shit game that it's not supposed to be close, or you have to kind of escape by the skin of your teeth. And then there's let's just call. I mean, there's probably going to be a loss in there somewhere. Like maybe there is. I shouldn't say probably, but when you go on the road and play Nebraska, Minnesota, I don't expect them to be good, but there's always been some weird stuff that happens in East Lansing, and then you go to Penn State. It's going to be tough to get through this thing unscathed. And if you do, as a couple years ago showed, if you lose one somewhere, it's not the end of the world as long as you take care of business in that one at the end of the year against Ohio State. And I think one of the bold takes, I'm workshopping it. I don't know how strongly I feel about it yet, but when we're looking at those over-unders and you have Ohio State at 10.5, I feel like there's a chance that Ohio State splits those games against Notre Dame and Penn State. And I do think that Michigan will win that game. So, maybe the under on Ohio State might be the play too. I don't know. I'm still kind of workshopping that, but I get the PFF has 12 of their guys in the top 100, but that's projection to me. There's an identity crisis there right now. And it seems like they're still kind of doubling down on that and building their fantasy football roster. But I think I don't see it with them. I see them having higher odds to win a national title, and I see them with higher odds to win a Big Ten title. And, that's all based on where the money's coming in at. But in the here and now, I feel pretty strongly about where Michigan stands over them. So that would kind of be the summation of how I feel about all this right now.
Caught soft.
Are you talking about Ohio State? So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for making it less subtle. So.
Yeah. Oh, it's not subtle.
Totally ruined.
I watched the 2021 game last night.
Yeah.
I'll probably watch the 2022 game later today. It's not subtle. It's on film, and it's all over social media now. So it's not subtle at all.
Well, I was trying to do it subtly, and then Clay called me out, exposed.
That's my bad.
Yeah, there was nothing subtle about the pounding that they gave in the trenches, man. That was beautiful. It's amazing because there was like, we need to pass more. We need, more big plays and stuff like that. There is nothing better, and I'll say it until I die, than lining up against a team and getting 5, 10, 15 yards at a time, and then not being able to stop you. That last drive in the Ohio State game in 2021 was gorgeous. That's what football should be.
And they did hit on some big plays
Sure
in the
they did.
game. And they saved some things, and they proved that they could do it. And JJ McCarthy was outstanding in that game, and I think you can only build off of those type of performances. But definitely, I got Michigan over 10.5 as well. And I just do want to say this before we move on. You're looking at these over-unders, gambling, Vegas. If you're a college athlete out there, don't gamble on this stuff, all right? Especially if you're from the state of Iowa. So,
or if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-DON'T-GAMBLE.
Yeah,
or whatever it is.
And I do hope those kids the Iowa student athletes that gamble, I hope they had the unders in their games last year. Because, they could be worth it. They could have some money.
Holy smokes!
But
the Kirk Ferentz AI was fantastic. When he said it was ineptitude, it wasn't point shaving. It was classic. Oh Lord! If you haven't seen it, Google it, folks.
Yeah, it was like a deep fake of Kirk Ferentz basically saying that his son Brian, the offensive coordinator, was not shaving the hell out of points last year. So
it was just ineptitude.
Yeah. And it was pretty realistic, I think.
It was, scary.
That was really good. So, go check that out if you haven't.
What's the line from Succession, Clay? I love you, but you're not serious people.
It's exactly the line.
There you go.
I love you, Iowa. We'll see what happens this year.